Hello and welcome to the ICEC webinar, a professional method for attending professional conferences. Robert Chamberlain will be presenting today on how to plan your attendance at a professional conference. He is a research professor of epidemiology at the University of Nebraska Medical Center and also emeritus professor of epidemiology at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. He is a past president of ACE as well. My name is Sarah Ray, and I'll be your headquarters assistant person for today's presentation. If at any time during the event you require any technical assistance, please use the chat function on the right side up at the, you can click it on the top and then send me headquarters support a chat and I'll be able to help you. Feel free to send a message. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for future viewing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry for a little bit of a delay, but I'm going to pass this on over to Bob Chamberlain now. Thanks.
I'll see the video. If you're having any problem at all, just type something in the chat which would tell us that you're not receiving. As Sarah said, I'm Bob Chamberlain. I'm by background an epidemiologist. Most of my training was in sociology, and I have a lot of interest in group behavior, and that's one of the reasons that I'm interested in the topic that we're going to talk about this morning. It's August 2016. I'm located in Estes Park, Colorado today, and enjoying some wonderful weather. The topic today was, and the timing is stimulated in some degree by our upcoming conference of the American Association for Cancer Education and the Cancer Patient Education Network, CPEN, which will be held in September in Bethesda, Maryland. I've had experience with professional conferences for more than 50 years, beginning at the time when I was a graduate student and then a fellow, and I have, from these experiences, noted that conferences are a variety of different types, and they have different purposes, and as a participant, it's important to understand all those things. So, to start off, I'd like you to think about what motivates you to go to a conference. There are many, many motivations. For example, suggestions by others is often a stimulating event, and then you start thinking about what are the benefits that I perceive from attending a conference. Well, you can think about all of the things such as it's an attractive venue, very nice city, you have friends there, it's close by, or attractive dates. You don't have any other obligations for the 2 or 3 days of the conference, or that you also have the funds, the money to support your attendance at the conference. And all of these things have pluses and minuses. So I always suggest that you take a piece of paper and draw a vertical line down the middle and put benefits on one side and costs on the other side, or plus and minus, and write down in your own words the various plus factors and the various minus factors. But once you've determined that you would be interested in a conference, a particular one, you need to do some research and learn something about the conference. The details about the conference are usually evolving during the 6 to 8 months prior to the date of the conference. And so, looking at the website for a particular conference, you will see that Shortly after the announcement, many months, maybe a year in advance, the website will come up and it will show a preliminary program, and that will be added to, more details coming in the months ahead. But take a look at that, and usually at that time there are invitations to submit abstracts. If you determine that making a presentation at a particular conference is something that would benefit you, would benefit the projects that you're working on, you should consider writing an abstract. And the website should tell you the details of the abstract. How many words, what sections need to be included. And if you've decided to do this, you may have several concerns about it. An abstract, in my view, is essentially an advertising document. It should tell the reader of the abstract what the main topic is and what they're likely to hear. And it's often the case that I have submitted abstracts for projects that are not completed, that I believe that by the time of the conference I should have full details to report, but I don't at the time I write the abstract. So I think about the variety of interests of the audience. And if you look at the website for the conference, you may see a button that says Past Conferences. And looking at past conferences and complete program lists of participants helps you get a feel for the likely audience for your own abstract in the upcoming conference. So look at past programs, past attendance, and other features. And in the website, you may see a place for you to register your own email so that the organization can send you updates by email and remind you of upcoming deadlines and other things. So I encourage you to always register your email. Finding out who typically attends the conference is very worthwhile. Finding out the various specialties that are included. You may see sections that describe specialties in the preliminary program. And viewing the schedule far in advance as it develops will help you understand what the various subjects are likely to be, the various activities of the conference, whether there are other activities and features to the conference. For example, many years ago, the AACE has had various optional things that you can do associated with the conference. Another association that I belong to had a bowling tournament one evening in the conference, which was delightful. Now, with regard to submitting an abstract, look at the submission instructions very carefully and identify what sort of format they like to have. And select a title that will be attractive to an audience. So whether it's a poster that you're hoping to have accepted or a podium presentation, think about the title that will attract participants to want to know more. The title needs to be something that you will have enough keywords in it to describe the variables that you're going to talk about. It really doesn't help the audience if they see a title that says, "What's new in oncology nursing?" It needs to be something that's substantive, and descriptive, but not so long that it takes a lot of concentration to decipher the title. And keep your abstract as simple as possible. Don't try to tell the reader everything you know about the topic. That's not necessary in an abstract. It's not necessary in a podium presentation or or a poster either. But keep it as simple as possible. Have other people edit and modify it for you. And that's another thing to consider in the abstract. So let's suppose that you have an abstract and you've submitted it to the organization and it has been reviewed. And some weeks later, you get a notification that it's been accepted. Sometimes that acceptance indicates whether they want it in poster form or whether they want it as a oral presentation from the podium, or it's something that will be presented in a panel of people on a particular topic. Planning your attendance, once you have all of that preliminary stuff completed, planning your attendance is very important. Besides the usual transportation issues, airline tickets, hotel reservation, and that kind of thing, you need to identify what things you're going to do in the 2 or 3 days of the conference besides your own presentation. Some conferences are extremely large. I've attended conferences that had more than 10,000 attendees and more than one hotel. And I've attended small conferences of 50 people or less. And it's very different the way you might plan. Very large conferences often have many concurrent sessions, so you won't be able to attend everything. The preliminary program, which is more or less complete a week or two before the conference date, should allow you to identify what concurrent programs or presentations or groups of presentations that you want to attend. You can't do everything, but you can look at a program and identify the speaker and the topic and make some judgments about whether it's something you're going to attend. Usually I print out the program in advance before I travel to the meeting, and I put a small circle beside presentations or events that I want to attend. And inside the circle, I put an A if it's a high priority, and a B if it's an alternative priority, and a C if it's interesting and I have the time to do it and no other conflicts. So think about planning your day for each day of the conference so that you will be able to hear the best topics best in your interest and from people that you want to listen to. So scheduling your time is pretty important, and you should schedule your break time also. So if there are presentations followed by a break and you are particularly interested in talking to some of the presenters that have just presented, talking to them during a coffee break is often a good way to start. There are other things that you may want to do during your break time. depending on where you are in your career and what your current interests are. And for example, if you are a postdoc and you're looking for a junior faculty position or a junior member in a pharmaceutical company or whatever it might be, think about identifying future employers at a professional meeting. They might not be directly tasked with finding new employees, but contacts are very useful. And how you present yourself in a professional meeting is also very important. So if you're shopping for a job, you probably don't want to hang around with 3 or 4 friends and identify yourself. You probably want to arrange it so that you are by yourself, and when you introduce yourself to someone, identify up front that you are interested in a new position, what your specialty and interests are, and ask them to think about who you might speak with. It's useful at that point to have a business card. So don't go to a professional meeting if you want people to remember you in the weeks afterwards unless you take a stack of business cards. Most universities can provide these to you. Many employers do it automatically, but you can do it yourself. And depending on your particular interests and how you want to do it, realize that business cards can also not only include your contact information, phone numbers, and emails, but you can also put a picture there. And that helps someone remember who you are. So think about business cards or a handout of some sort if you want specific follow-up. And let me shift to the follow-up as well. After the meeting, if you have met people that you want to continue to communicate with in various ways, send them an email. So when you return home, look at all of the business cards and the notes that you've taken and send a brief message to these people. Say, you know, enjoyed meeting you or speaking with you at the conference in Bethesda. I'd like to remind you that I'm a cancer epidemiologist, or I'm a patient educator, or whatever, and that you have either specific questions from them or that you could just say, I'd like to communicate with you from time to time. It's a good way to start a relationship, and you can also use social media for these purposes, but it's often a direct email that is currently the most popular. So let me get back to the informal time at a conference and how you can do something during the informal time besides have a cup of coffee. Think about break time, think about meal time and such. What do you want to do? Who do you want to sit next to at a meal? Who would you like to make prior arrangements with to have a short conversation? I recommend, particularly to students, that they contact people that they would like a private conversation with some weeks in advance of the conference, and send an email to the person and say, I'm going to attend this conference in Bethesda. I suppose you're likely to be there as well. Would it be possible for me to take you to breakfast? And I'm interested in your research pertaining to that. This was the topic of my dissertation, or this is current topic that I'm working on, and you can mention the other people, your collaborators, and very often you'll get a positive response from the person, and you'll have the opportunity to talk to somebody who might really have an impact on your career or the future direction of your research. It's very hard to predict. But if you're seeking mentorship or advice or new ideas, and you know the famous people working in your field, a professional conference is a great venue to capitalize or to establish a relationship with someone. So scheduling time with key people is something that I think is pretty important. And by the way, this outline that I'm following more or less this morning is available to you from Sarah as well. So the next category of ideas that I had is all about taking notes and recording what you do at a professional meeting. It's after 2 or 3 days of a professional meeting, you will forget the names of many people that you have talked to. And it's very disconcerting, particularly when they are people new to you. And I recommend that you mark up your program like I described and make notes right on the program, but also keep a diary. A small notebook is useful, and if each day you record who you talked to, the conferences that you attended, and any ideas that popped up as a result of these activities. So learn about the organization. Usually a professional conference is sponsored by a particular professional organization, and sometimes by universities, but you should know all the details of the organization behind the conference. And as you attend the conference, you will register when you arrive, and you will get a name tag. And the name tag may not be exactly to your satisfaction. So my name is Robert, but everyone calls me Bob, and I'm very comfortable with that. But the name tag usually says Robert Marvin Chamberlain, and I usually take along a Sharpie, and I write Bob at the top of the name tag. That calls people's attention to my willingness to be a little more informal, and also a Sharpie is easier to read than small print on a name tag. And that helps identify you. If you are at a current university or your employer has a lapel pin, wear it. That helps people remember not only who you are, but where you are now. And also, I think it's useful for you to develop what I call an elevator speech. And this is a small speech about yourself and your interests that lasts about as long as it takes an elevator to reach 2 or 3 floors. And this sort of rehearsed speech is useful at a coffee break or most other times when you have a limited amount of time to explain to somebody who you are and why you're there, what your interests are, and connections that you would like to make. So So keep that in mind. You don't need to develop a litany of your history, but I think it's useful to give the listener enough information to remember you without too much clutter. So if you are either in a podium presentation session, or you're making rounds of posters, be sure to have something to write on, something to take notes on. It might be your diary or whatever you like, but jotting down just a few key items can be very, very helpful. So have maybe 3x5 cards or your diary, like I said, to take notes on. And think about other future activities that may evolve from attending a meeting. Early in your career, you might find that linking yourself to the sponsoring professional organization could be helpful for your career in many, many ways. Many professional organizations operate essentially on the work of volunteers. And very often they have committees that have designated positions for young investigators and fellows and graduate students. It usually does not involve a lot of work during the period between annual meetings, but the organization needs new blood in its leadership. So whether you're an established investigator or you're early in your career, helping a professional organization by volunteering can be a very good thing, and probably not obligatory for years and years to come unless you want it to be. So talking to people who are in the executive council of the organization during the annual meeting and suggesting that you have an interest in the organization and would be willing to volunteer for a variety of activities of the organization. So, and I recommend personally volunteering to be a reviewer of submitted abstracts for the conference next year. It's a time-limited activity. They usually don't assign you too many abstracts to read, and there's usually a rating system. You'll learn something about this process, and you'll be doing a great service to the organization. The leadership is very appreciative of volunteers. So think about that. I think it's useful to, in this process, if you want to be involved in the organization, is find a senior leader in the organization's structure, preferably an officer, but not necessarily, and use them as a mentor in all of your communications about the organization. These are individuals who are typically leaders in the field, and this is can be a great relationship to get established. So, of the variety of activities surrounding a professional organization, in wrapping this up, I'd like to focus on great benefits to you and to the organization for attending a professional meeting in a professional way. So let me wrap this up and invite you to type in any questions that you may have there on your screen. So as I see it from my screen here, there are 15 participants. So either Sarah or I would be happy to respond to any questions that you may have. Let me leave it open for a minute so you can so that you can type in.
Feel free to send any chat or any questions using the chat or Q&A function, and I can pass them on too. Hi, Bob. I have a question for you.
Okay. Is this Jody?
Yes. It's what should an elevator speech consist of?
Usually it includes some introductory remarks. I would say, hi, I'm Bob Chamberlain. I heard your presentation this afternoon, very interested. I came because I'm working in a research project that is tangential to your topic, and I wanted to think about new ideas for my research. Would you be willing to let me contact you by email or phone? Here is my card. So that's what I call a purposeful elevator speech, because it has a request embedded in it. Another one might be something like, I'm Bob Chamberlain. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in epidemiology. I'm working with a team of people at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha. We have a project that we think is more or less parallel to yours, and I just want to thank you for a very nice presentation. Here's my card. I'll be happy to talk with you later when you have more time. They may say, oh, I have time now. Let's get a cup of coffee. So those are you really don't know how busy the person is, but a direct encounter in the hallway of the hotel or in an elevator, of course. This is a good way to open up a conversation. Certainly there are ways to do it depending on how you personally like to do this sort of activity.
Any other questions? Looks like we have another Q&A from Charles Kelly.
Okay.
Would there be any chance of you doing a similar WebEx on applying for federal grants, which you have much more experience with?
Well, there are many short courses and webinars on grant seeking, and there are a lot of subtopics within this. Yeah, I would have an interest in doing that, but I don't know if it would be superior to things that are already out there. The National Cancer Institute, most of the institutes and NIH have webinar resources available. I think that many of these are more or less mechanical and really focus on how to make an application. That's great, but they typically don't cover things like how to find potential grant mechanisms that that fulfill your interests. but it depends on the type of grant and the mechanism. Some of these are quite specific. Did you have any ideas? Okay, any other comments or suggestions?
Feel free to send anything else on to chat.
One thing that I would recommend about planning ahead, and I missed this in my outline, is that when you first hear about a conference, and it may be 12 months from the date you're looking at the announcement, call the hotel and make a room reservation. You can always cancel it, but usually the organization has blocked a certain number of rooms at a lower negotiated room rate, and you definitely want to see if you can get one of those rooms. Early in my career, in fact, I was a graduate student, went to a very large meeting, and I didn't understand that I should have made a room reservation on the reserved block of sleeping rooms at the meeting hotel way in advance. So I didn't do this, and neither did 5 of my colleagues who were also graduate students. And someone mentioned, well, what hotel are you going to be in the conference? One of our professors said. We said, oh, we don't know. We'll think we ought to get a reservation. He said, well, the rooms are all gone. He said, you're going to have to find another place to sleep. And so all of us shared a room at the downtown YMCA in Denver on a very snowy winter week that we attended this conference. The room rate was great, but we would have paid not much more to stay in the conference hotel. Okay, well, let's wrap this up, Sarah. Thanks, everybody. Yep.
Yes, and actually Charles did have a couple other things. He just was referring to educational grants and tricks of the trade is what to go with. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a very good topic.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Does anyone else have anything? We can wrap it up. Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you at the International Cancer Education Conference in Bethesda, Maryland in just a few weeks. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. Feel free to contact ACE headquarters if you have any questions. I'll be here to help. And thanks again for coming.
Very good.
Thank you,
thanks. I'll sign off.
Thank you, Bob, for presenting today. It was great.
Okay.